February 2014. Northern California. A couple walks their dog across land they've walked 1,000 times before. Same trail, same routine, same view, and then their dog stops. Right there on the hillside, something catches the light, something metallic, something rusted. They dig out a single rotting can, and inside, gold coins, not one or two, not a handful. 1,427 gold coins, minted during the gold rush era, buried in the dirt beneath their feet. Face value, $27,980. Market value, somewhere around $10 million. This is the story of the Saddle Ridge Hoard, the biggest accidental treasure discovery in modern American history, and it started with a dog walk. Let's call them John and Mary. Those aren't their real names. They never revealed who they actually are, and for good reason, but we'll get to that. John and Mary were a quiet couple living in a rural corner of Northern California, not wealthy, not famous, not even particularly lucky. They owned a modest piece of property in the hills, somewhere near the Sierra Nevada range. Gold country, the kind of landscape where fortunes were made and lost 150 years ago. But they weren't treasure hunters. They didn't own metal detectors. They weren't reading maps or digging test holes. They were just living their lives. Every day they walked their dog along the same path on their land, the same route they'd taken for years, nothing special, nothing exciting. Quiet mornings, open sky, the sound of their dog sniffing through brush. Routine, until it wasn't, because here's the truth about accidental windfalls. They don't happen to people who are searching. They happen to people who are just there, and that's exactly what makes them so unbelievable. February 2014. John and Mary are out for their usual morning walk with their dog. Same trail, same rhythm, same trees overhead, and then their dog stops. Not because of an animal, not because of a sound. The dog just pauses near a spot they've passed 100 times before. John glances down, and there it is. A rusty metal can, old, corroded, barely visible, sticking out of the dirt at an angle. Most people would have walked past it. Most people had every single day for years. But something about it catches John's attention. He bends down, brushes away some dirt. The can is heavy, really heavy. He pulls it free from the soil. Mary leans in, they pry it open. Gold coins, not just a few. The entire can is packed with them. They stare at each other, hearts pounding, minds racing. This isn't possible, but here's where it gets unbelievable. Because that first can, that wasn't the only one. John and Mary don't say a word. They start digging. Not far from the first can, they find another, then another, then another. By the end of that day, they've uncovered somewhere between 7 and 8 rusted metal cans, all buried in the same area, all filled with gold coins. The two of them on their knees in the dirt, hands shaking, pulling coins out of decaying metal containers that have been underground for more than a century. 1,427 coins in total. All U.S. gold coins. All minted between 1847 and 1894, right in the heart of the gold rush era. Face value, $27,980. But here's the thing about rare coins. Face value means nothing. Some of these coins were in near-mint condition, pristine, as if they'd been buried yesterday. Others were from rare years, low mintage. The kind of coins collectors spend lifetimes searching for. And John and Mary just stumbled onto all of them at once. They carry the cans back to their house, lock the doors, pull the curtains, and then they sit there surrounded by more money than they've ever seen, trying to process what just happened. The odds of finding buried treasure on your own property, astronomically low. The odds of it being gold rush era coins in pristine condition, even lower. The odds of it being one of the largest hoards ever discovered in the United States. You're more likely to be struck by lightning, twice. But that's not even the hardest part. Because now they have to figure out what to do with it. And that's when it got real. John and Mary aren't numismatists. They don't know coin grades or auction houses or authentication processes. They just know they're sitting on something massive, something that could change their lives forever or destroy them. Because here's what most people don't think about when they imagine finding treasure. The moment you tell anyone, everything changes. Your privacy, gone. Your safety, compromised. Your quiet life, over. John and Mary understood that immediately. So they made a decision. They would stay anonymous. No real names, No interviews, no exact location. They reached out to Kajans, a respected numismatic firm in Tiburon, California, experts who could authenticate the coins, assess their value, and help them navigate what came next. And Kajans confirmed what John and Mary already suspected. This was the real deal. The hoard became known publicly as the Saddle Ridge Hoard, named after the hillside trail where it was found. 1,427 coins, dated between 1847 and 1894. Total assessed value, around $10 million. $10 million found by accident on a dog walk. But here's the twist most people miss. Finding the money was the easy part. The news broke fast. Within days, the Saddle Ridge Hoard was international news. Headlines everywhere, TV segments, online articles, social media exploding with theories. Who buried it? Why? Was it stolen? Was it part of a bank heist from the 1800s? Would the government try to claim it? Everyone wanted to know. And everyone wanted to know who John and Mary were. But John and Mary refused to reveal their identities. They used pseudonyms in every public statement. They never disclosed the exact location of their property, because the moment that information got out, their lives would be in danger. Treasure hunters showing up on your land, trespassers digging holes in the middle of the night, strangers knocking on your door, cameras, reporters, people who think there might be more buried somewhere nearby. John and Mary understood something that most people only learn too late. A windfall doesn't just change your bank account, it changes everything. Your relationships, your safety, your sense of normal, so they stayed hidden. They worked quietly with Kajans to authenticate and sell the coins through private auctions. They kept their faces out of the media. They protected their property. And they dealt with the questions nobody talks about: taxes, legal ownership, provenance. What if someone claimed the coins were stolen? What if the original owner's descendants came forward? Every single one of those questions had to be answered before they could touch a dime. Because finding money is one thing, keeping it, that's a whole different battle. But here's what makes this story so gripping. John and Mary didn't do anything wrong. They didn't trespass. They didn't steal. They didn't search. They were just walking their dog. And yet, from the moment they pulled that first can out of the ground, their entire world shifted. They had to hire experts. They had to navigate legal gray areas. They had to decide who to trust and who to keep at arm's length. They had to accept that their quiet life was over. And through it all, they stayed disciplined. They stayed private. They stayed smart. Most people in their position would have talked, would have done interviews, would have posted photos online. John and Mary didn't. They understood that privacy was the most valuable thing they had, more valuable than the coins themselves, because once you lose your privacy, you can never get it back. And that brings us to the money lessons buried in this story. Here's the first lesson, and it's one most people learn the hard way. When sudden money shows up in your life, whether it's an inheritance, a legal settlement, a lottery win, or 1,400 gold coins in your backyard, the single most important thing you can do is keep your mouth shut. John and Mary got that right from day one. They didn't tell neighbors. They didn't post on social media. They didn't brag to friends or family. They stayed anonymous. Because the moment people know you have money, everything changes. Relationships shift. Strangers become interested. People you haven't heard from in years suddenly reach out. Some of it's innocent, some of it's not. But all of it adds pressure. All of it creates risk. Privacy isn't just about safety, though that's a huge part of it. It's also about protecting your ability to think clearly and make good decisions without the noise of everyone else's opinions, expectations, and agendas. John and Mary understood that $10 million comes with a target on your back, so they kept that target as small as possible. They worked with professionals. They kept their identities hidden. They moved carefully, and because of that, they were able to hold on to what they found. That's lesson one. Silence is protection. When money shows up, the fewer people who know, the better. Here's the second lesson, and it's just as critical. Finding money and keeping money are two completely different things. John and Mary didn't just stumble onto $10 million and start spending. They had to deal with authentication, legal ownership, taxes, and all the bureaucratic chaos that comes with a discovery this size. They couldn't just sell the coins on eBay and call it a day. They had to prove the coins were real. They had to verify that no one else had a legal claim. They had to work with experts who understood numismatics, provenance, and the legal frameworks around found property. And yes, they had to deal with taxes, because here's the reality. When you find something of value, the IRS considers it income. You can't just pocket it and pretend it didn't happen. John and Mary worked with professionals to make sure everything was handled correctly. They didn't try to hide the hoard. They didn't try to dodge the system. They played it straight. And that's what allowed them to actually keep the money. Because the people who lose windfalls aren't the ones who find the money. They're the ones who make bad decisions after they find it. They don't get professional help. They don't think about taxes. They don't plan for the long term. They just react. John and Mary didn't react. They responded carefully, strategically, patiently. They understood that managing a windfall is a skill. And if you don't have that skill, you need to hire people who do. That's lesson 2. The windfall isn't the finish line. It's the starting line. What you do next determines whether you keep it or lose it. So here's what we're left with. A couple walks their dog. Same route they've walked for years, same hills, same dirt. And buried beneath their feet, waiting for over a century, is $10 million in gold coins. They didn't search for it. They didn't expect it. They didn't do anything to earn it. It was just there. And that's the thing about accidental windfalls. They don't follow logic. They don't care about effort or fairness or who deserves what. They just happen. But what makes John and Mary's story so powerful isn't the discovery. It's what they did after. They stayed private. They stayed smart. They stayed disciplined. They didn't let the money destroy them. They didn't let the attention derail them. They worked with experts. They protected their safety. They handled the windfall like adults, not lottery winners. And because of that, the Saddle Ridge Hoard didn't ruin their lives. It changed them, but on their terms. Most people never get a moment like that. Most of us will never stumble onto buried treasure or find millions in the backyard. But the lessons from John and Mary's story, those apply to everyone. Because whether it's $10 million or 10,000, the principles are the same. Stay private, stay smart, get help, think long term, and never forget the money is just the beginning. What you do with it is what matters. So if you found this story as unbelievable as I did, do me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video with a friend who loves wild true stories about money, luck, and life-changing moments. Because stories like this, they remind us that the world is stranger and more surprising than we ever imagined. Now here's my question for you, and I really want to know. If you found $10 million buried in your backyard tomorrow, would you tell anyone, or would you keep it completely secret?